What's something cool you recently learned about? Cheetahs are so genetically similar that any organ from a cheetah can be transplanted into any other cheetah and it won't be rejected. Cheetah, leopard, 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 leopard. Jumping spiders do not actually use their muscles to jump. They don't even have muscles. Instead, they can control at will their blood pressure. The blood quickly flows down to their legs, which stretches them with enough force to jump. On December 21, 2020, Jupiter and Saturn will align such that you can see them together in the same telescope, and even with the naked eye. It's called the Great Conjunction. Edit. To answer some common questions. 1. It should be viewable from most anywhere in the world. In the northern hemisphere, look southwest. In the southern hemisphere, look south. 2. The best time to view will be 30 minutes to 2 hours after sunset. 3. If it's cloudy on the 21st, don't worry. The 21st is just the date that they're closest. But since the planets move so slowly across the sky, it should allow for similar viewing in the several days before and after the 21st. 4. The planets will appear pretty low in the sky, so try to find a viewing location where you can see as much of the horizon as possible in the proper direction. Since there are several nights this will be visible, it's best to try early to find the right spot. Museums are struggling to keep the appropriate humidity levels for their collections because of the lack of foot traffic and people breathing in the buildings due to COVID. Edit. Should say I heard this on the podcast. No such thing as a fish, which I highly recommend, as I'm sure many in this comment chain would as well. Smiley face. I think, as some have pointed out, struggle might not be the right word to have used, but it does appear from the research I did this morning that it is something museums are dealing with due to lack of foot traffic, creating a new normal of humidity in these places. About relative humidity, https://www.birmingham.org.uk/blog/post/conservation-in-the-relative-humidity a short blurb on how people affect humidity under the section monitoring temperature and humidity, https://cool.culturalheritage.org/beorg/chikara/chisen.html. As other have mentioned, this was also brought up in a separate British Museum member podcast that I was not aware of, and it would seem, fish actually talked to or got their info from the people there. Compared to Earth, there is a huge ratio of heavy water in comets and other bodies in the outer solar system. Like, a lot of heavy water. The Native Americans of the Great Plains developed a form of sign language that allowed them to trade and communicate across language barriers. It's called Plains Indian Sign Language, https://plainsindiansignlanguage.com/video/, and it was used by a variety of tribal nations spanning an area from Canada to northern Mexico. Rodents can't vomit. No one who was born blind has ever gone on to develop schizophrenia. Researchers are investigating how congenital blindness may protect people from developing the condition. Female seagulls are a different color than males. Only seagulls can see the color difference. For the last 50-plus years, every submarine and aircraft carrier built by the U.S. Navy has been powered by nuclear reactors. What's more, the aircraft carriers have a 50-year service life and only need to be refueled one time. There has also never been a nuclear-related accident on board these ships. 2 subs have sank, but not because of a failure in the propulsion system. President Calvin Coolidge had a pet raccoon in the White House named Rebecca. She was supposed to be for Thanksgiving dinner, but she was too cute to eat. This was the 1920s. I think it's interesting that raccoon was apparently a normal dish to eat then. Squirrels can acquire terminal velocity while plummeting to the ground, on average above 70 feet, and survive 80% of the time. New fish pop up in ponds because ducks eat fish eggs from other ones and excrete them whole in another water body. Edit. Source https://www.smithsonian.mag.com/smart-news/special-delivery-duck-poop-may-transport-fish-new-waters-180975230/. The shower water on Alcatraz was intentionally kept very hot. This is so prisoners wouldn't get used to cold water and be able to swim to shore if they escaped. Otters have tiny skin pockets to collect their favorite stones. The Earth is slowly decelerating, 17 milliseconds slower per 100 years. In 140 million years, the time in a day will be increased to 25 hours. The mythological reason why our galaxy is called the Milky Way. Basically, Heracles, whom the Romans called Hercules, was a bastard of Zeus, and as a result Zeus' wife Hera hated his guts. Her shenanigans caused Heracles' mother to abandon him as a baby, so Athena found him and brought him to Hera. Not recognizing Heracles, the goddess took pity on him and nursed him. But Heracles was a toothy baby, and when he bit down, Hera pushed him back because Ao and her milk splattered onto the sky and created the Milky Way. This didn't help Heracles with the whole Hera hating his guts thing, by the way. That vets can transplant feathers to birds and will harvest flight and tail feathers from bird who didn't make it and donate to another bird in need like an organ donor. Edit. Well, went to bed and this blew up. Thank you kind strangers for the votes and awards. Also thank you to all the bird friends for all the extra info in comments. I learned even more about this process called imping and is a centuries-old technique. My new favorite vocabulary word is phenology. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/phenology. Basically, phenology is the study of the rhythms of nature. Observing the changes in the trees and plants and animal life as the seasons progress. While it has scientific value in studying things like climate change, it has also been proven to be wonderfully therapeutic for many people during this past year, when we have all been quarantined inside and each month drearily bleeds into the next. Focusing on the sky and the trees and the birds and bunnies gives you a sense of stability and knowledge that the world is still going on like it has before and we are all part of it. The word, phenology, comes from the Greek pheno, meaning asterisk, to show, bring to light, make to appear, which sounds relaxing in itself. I'm teaching myself how to read hieroglyphs, and man, that language is nuts. A language where symbols don't just convey meaning, they also have an aesthetic function, is wild. You can read it left to right or right to left, and the way to tell is to find a symbol with a face, an animal or person, and they will always be facing towards the start of the word. It boggles the mind how they were able to decipher all of this, since sometimes a symbol represents a word, sometimes just a letter, sometimes nothing at all, but it's there as a support to clarify the meaning of the word. It's all just really cool. Also, do yourself a favor and sign yourself up to Ancient Egypt for pictures, the most stunning pieces of prehistoric art. Back in the old days, sometimes the guillotine would malfunction. It would only do half the job. They would have to set it up and do it again. There are certain species of wasp that pollinate figs and then may end up dead inside the fruit. That if you put a sea sponge in a blender, the cells will reform into a sea sponge again. And if you grind up two different sponge species together, cells of the two species will sort themselves out and reform into the sponges of the original species, not one sponge with mixed species cells. You know how human blood shed their nuclei so that they can carry more oxygen? Well, bird blood keeps their nuclei so their blood can replicate itself as it travels across the body. Their blood self-duplicates. Human blood comes from our bone marrow, but by having their blood replicate, bird bones can be lighter so the birds can fly with less effort. The most missed word in Hangman is jazz. Cancer is named after its appearance after it had spread in the body, resembling a crab. Crabs were called that first, and the word stems from Greek, if I recall correctly. Also, there is a phenomenon called carcinization, which is the evolving into a crab-like shape, even for non-crabs. This has happened to many different kind of crustaceans, crabs being one type of crustacean. Female spotted hyenas give birth and have sex with their clitorises. Cats get the majority of their liquids from what they eat. It's why you don't often see them drinking water like dogs do. When cooking, vegetables that grow underground, potatoes, carrots, beets, turnips, should start off in cold water. Vegetables that grow above ground, greens, peas, corn, should be placed into already boiling water. Apparently a golden rule, but only just found out about it. Ducks are found on every continent except Antarctica. Duck. Windows plus Shift plus S to get a screen capture on Windows. Edit. Yes, PRTSC also takes a screen capture, but Win plus Shift plus S lets you instantly choose which part of the screen you want captured. That Volkswagen actually sells sausages and actually sells more sausages than it sells cars. Lego is the #1 tire producer in the world. How fucking big wolves are. Honestly, why did I never know this before? The origin of the word, happiness, is from the Middle English, hap, which has to do with chance and possibility, as in, happenstance, or perhaps. So happiness was originally about the feeling of good fortune, getting lucky, the chance that something could or could not occur, and then it goes your way. Happiness is that specific feeling when something that could have gone horribly wrong goes amazing well. That the dog name, Fido, comes from the Latin, fidelis, which in English means loyal. That's pretty cool, I guess. Horseshoe crab's closest relative in the animal kingdom is the scorpion. They've existed for over 445 million years, their blood is blue and can sell for $15,000 a liter because various properties make it extremely valuable to medical science. Astronomer here. The planet Mercury has a tail, like a comet does. Specifically, Mercury's is made of sodium. https://science.nasa.gov/mercury's-sodium-tail closing parenthesis that is in the atmosphere and is stripped away by the solar wind and micrometeorites. What blows my mind in particular, if that wasn't cool enough, is you can actually see this from Earth if you have a sodium filter and a long enough exposure. The hardest part is that this tail is very faint and Mercury is pretty bright, never goes far from the sun. A pic is in the link above. And I just think everything about this is fantastic. Space is just so cool. It's illegal in Switzerland to have just one guinea pig, because guinea pigs are social animals like humans. Wax cylinder records. Before pressed vinyl, there were cylinders of wax that only held about 3 to 4 minutes of audio and deteriorated quickly enough that people could record other audio on them by shaving the wax down smoothly and re-engraving it with new audio. I'm fascinated with these things now that I've learned about them. Before wax cylinders, people used to record on tinfoil. Australian shepherds aren't from Australia. In Des Moines, Iowa, there is a riverside archaeological site over 7,000 years old, making it the some of the oldest man-made structures west of the Mississippi. It is well preserved because the site and inhabitants were covered with layers of mud after it was flooded. It is known as the Palace Site. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/palace_site. The last sense you lose before you die is the ability to hear. So if you see someone dying, comfort them, they can still hear you. Tell them everything is gonna be okay. Even if they don't know you. It's nice to have a friend there to comfort you even after death. There is a 30-year project to build a 13th century castle, using the same methods as the original builders. A YouTube, Absolute History, Secrets of Castles series one been watching is amazing. On Thanksgiving, my adult children and I watched Ice Age again. We noticed that Sid the Sloth has a tail. We looked it up and, yes, ancient sloths did have tails and sometimes grew to the size of modern elephants. The fact that there are intergalactic rogue planets that roam around the space that's in between galaxies. That salmon are carnivores. And that polar bears are hypercarnivores, meaning that 90% of their diet is meat while most other bears are hypercarnivores and only 10% of their diet is meat. Our days as kids seemed longer because we often had new experiences, which the brain tends to save and keep as memories. As adults, especially with a routine, time seems to fly because of repetitiveness, as our brains don't want to record the same damn thing every time. That in 2007, Rockstar Games allowed fans to call a number and rant about what they thought was wrong with America. The best calls were featured on a radio station in Grand Theft Auto 4. A gamma-ray burst, which is a brief, highly intense explosion of gamma-ray radiation in outer space, might have been responsible for the mass extinction event at the end of the Ordovician period 450 million years ago. This can actually happen. It's a real thing. If you have a blockage in your intestines, there's no way for the feces to get out of the body but through the esophagus. You're basically puking your own feces. Potatoes were brought to Europe in YHE 16th century. When tomatoes were first introduced to Europe, people for many years believed that they were poisonous because some aristocrats had died after eating them. Turns out they died because they ate the tomatoes off of a lead plate, and the acid of the tomatoes absorbed some of the lead. The word tomato also come from the Aztec word, tomatl. That the national animal of Scotland is a unicorn. Robert McNamara was rejected as a military pilot in World War II due to poor eyesight. But he went on to become Secretary of Defense under Kennedy and Johnson. His sister Peg, however, did become a B-24 bomber pilot in the war. She was a member of the Women Air Force Service Pilots. The WASPs were civilian pilots who volunteered to fly military aircraft in non-combat missions to free up male pilots. A single spaghetti noodle is called a spaghetto. Flooding enemies with opiates and other drugs to promote addiction and complacency has been a tactic used for at least a few hundred years. Mike the Headless Chicken. He survived 18 months after his head was cut off. That Tasmanian devils generally give birth to anywhere between 40 to 60 babies at once. They only have 4 nipples, so as soon as they are born, there is a mad race to the nipples to determine who lives and dies. As soon as 4 have latched on, the mother eats the rest like Tic Tacs. Learned it from the Ologies podcast. If you donate your body to science and research, they can legally use you as a crash test dummy. I learned that they may have an effective treatment for HIV/AIDS. They found that people who carry 2 copies of the Delta 32, CCR5 Delta 32 gene mutation are immune from contracting the virus. Doctors have taken bone marrow from these individuals to help treat those with HIV/AIDS with surprising results. The patients were able to be in a state of remission from the virus. https://www.healthline.com/health-news/scientists-cure-man-of-this-means-for-hive-cure. Updated. It still needs more research and fine-tuning, but it's a good step in the right direction in regards to finding a cure. Is this treatment flawless? No, but what other treatment options for a cure have they discovered yet? There's at least some glimmer of hope in this discovery. I really hope that with better technology and scientific advancements they can make this treatment fully effective. Wombats and some other Australian animals have biofluorescent fur. It glows under UV light. The average color of the universe is #FFF87*, hex triplet value, asterisk, and is called cosmic latte. However, this was only after the calculations were corrected, and before the correction it was believed to be a minty turquoise green. Edit. Who would have thought people would be so polarized on the color of the universe? Anyways, here's more information. https://www.newscientist.com/article/d and 2013-the-universe-is-not-turquoise-it's-beige/closing parenthesis for whoever is interested. Triscuit is short for electricity biscuit, and it was the first cracker ever made with electricity. Thanks for watching. See you later.